The Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin was supposed to signal unity, a trilateral axis, India with China and Russia, standing firm in a world increasingly defined by US pressure. Photographs of Narendra Modi walking the corridors with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin made headlines. The optics screamed alignment, strategic camaraderie, a show of strength against Washington. But appearances can deceive. Modi returned home before China's grand September 3rd military parade. Putin stayed. Kim Jong-un joined. The parade was not just ceremonial, it was a stage for loyalty, for signaling alliances, for showcasing China's rising military and geopolitical might. Modi's absence was deliberate, yes, but it also revealed the limits of India's engagement with China. The photograph might hint at unity, but the reality tells a different story. India is still on the fence. Why? Because Chinese troops still are at Indian borders. Bilateral optics can create impressions, but impressions are not strategy. The SCO projected unity, yet the summit leaves a sharp, unavoidable question. How long can India straddle the fence before it is left alone? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. After 7 years, Modi returned to China, a carefully choreographed visit to Tianjin, yet one that would avoid stepping on toes in Beijing or Tokyo. But what does it mean when India's Prime Minister meets Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin in the same corridor, yet stays away from China's grand military parade on the 3rd of September? It means there are sensitivities involved. Modi's visit was multi-layered. On the one hand, bilateral optics with Xi and Putin sent a message. India remains engaged with its northern neighbor and a major global power broker. On the other hand, the absence from Beijing's parade signaled that New Delhi is not choosing a side in the growing alignment of China, Russia, and North Korea vis-a-vis the United States of America and the West. Putin and Kim Jong-un confirmed attendance at the parade, highlighting China's strategic messaging, alliances displayed in military precision, a showcase of might and loyalty. Modi's absence, in contrast, is a masterclass in restraint.
SCO, multilateralism और इंक्लूसिव वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर का मार्गदर्शक बन सकता है। मुझे खुशी है कि इस महत्वपूर्ण विषय पर आज एक स्टेटमेंट जारी किया जा रहा है। आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें SCO रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। दूसरी की बात कि SCO भी समय के अनुरूप इवॉल्व हो रहा है। ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम, ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग और साइबर सिक्योरिटी जैसे समकालीन चुनौतियों से निपटने के लिए 4 नए केंद्र बनाए जा रहे हैं।
The parade commemorating the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II was not merely ceremonial. Its political undertones are undeniable. Japan has urged countries not to attend, citing anti-Japanese overtones woven into the event. Modi's decision to return home before September 3rd was calculated. It preserved India's relationship with Japan, a growing security and economic partner, while maintaining dialogue with China without compromising India's strategic autonomy. But this is more than optics. It's a reflection of India's broader balancing act. On one side, Beijing's rising military and economic might. On the other, Tokyo's strategic caution, Washington's scrutiny, and New Delhi's own domestic considerations. Who is Modi signaling to, and who is he deliberately not?
They both agreed that the two countries were primarily focused on their domestic development goals, and in this they were partners rather than rivals. It was also an element of consensus between them that a stable and amicable relationship between India and China can be to the benefit of the 2.8 billion people who live in the two countries. The common interests of the two countries outweigh their differences, and the two leaders also shared a consensus on the fact that differences should not be allowed to be turned into disputes.
The calculus is clear. India cannot be perceived as fully aligning with China, nor can it afford to alienate the United States of America, especially after the Trump administration imposed 50% tariffs on India over its purchase of Russian oil, a move seen as penalizing New Delhi for indirectly funding Moscow's war in Ukraine. The tariffs are a stark reminder that global economics are inseparable from geopolitics, and India's policy of strategic autonomy is under constant test.
India has never been aligned to any power bloc throughout its history as an independent entity. Right from 1947, there was a Cold War raging from 1947 right up to 1991, but India never took sides. In fact, the only time that we came close to being a treaty ally, some sort of a quasi-alliance, it's not even an alliance, it's not even a treaty, it was like an understanding, was in August 1971 when we signed the Indo-Soviet Peace and Friendship Treaty. Even that couldn't be construed as an alliance, but that was the closest that we've come to being seen as aligned with one of the two power blocs that existed post the Second World War. Now, the Soviet tilt was essential in 1971 because the government of the day, led by Mrs. Gandhi, was fighting a multi-front war. On the one side, they had all of the Western countries that were behind the United States. You had Pakistan and China. So that's like literally 3 of the P5 countries that were arranged on one side, and you had just the Soviet Union. So India chose to be more closely aligned towards the Soviet Union, short of an actual treaty. Now, cut to 2025, when India is the 4th largest economy in the world, it is pursuing a strategy of strategic autonomy. It is, multi-aligned rather than aligned to one or the other bloc. And the fact that India is going to be very soon the 3rd largest economy in the world by the end of this decade, and eventually the 2nd largest economy a few decades after that, only suggests the point that India will continue to chart this path of multi-alignment, strategic autonomy. The very fact is that India from the very beginning has chosen this path of standing alone. The clearest evidence of this is the nuclear weapons program that India has pursued from the 1960s. Now, the fact is that that was a clear indication that India knew that if you were going to stand by yourself or stand on your own, you needed to ensure that you had the weapons to protect your independence as a strategically autonomous country. Whereas other countries of the world who were terrified, they were intimidated by the specter of nuclear weapon attack, they chose one camp or the other. So you have even the most progressive in the developed country.
And then there's the trade ledger. Numbers rarely lie. Between April and July 2025-26, India's exports to China rose by nearly 20% to $5.75 billion. Imports, however, climbed more modestly, but remain at a staggering $4.65 billion. The trade deficit has ballooned from $1.1 billion in 2003-2004 to $99.2 billion in 2024-25. China alone accounts for roughly 35% of India's total trade imbalance of $283 billion. But it's not just the size, it's the structure. China dominates India's import basket across critical industrial sectors. Nearly 98% of antibiotics like erythromycin come from China. In electronics, China supplies 97% of silicon wafers and 86% of flat panel displays. Solar cells and lithium-ion batteries, crucial for India's renewable energy ambitions, are over 75% sourced from Beijing. Such structural dependence provides China with leverage in times of political tension, a tool of pressure built into the very foundations of supply chains. The Commerce Ministry notes that many imports are raw materials and intermediate goods, later assembled into finished products for export. Yet, even with this nuance, the imbalance remains heavily tilted. India's share in bilateral trade has shrunk to just 11.2% today from 42.3% 2 decades ago. Strategic autonomy cannot be built on a foundation so heavily weighed in a rival's favor. Meanwhile, the SCO summit projected another narrative, the India-China-Russia axis, or the RIC. Bilateral talks with Putin and Xi were the headlines. But can optics alone create unity? The answer is no. China has consistently placed Pakistan at the top of its South Asian priorities. During his recent trip to India, Afghanistan and Pakistan, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi stated in Islamabad that Pakistan was the final stop and the most important stop of his journey. It was a clear signal that India, despite its size and potential, is treated as just another Asian state in Beijing's strategic calculus. The trilateral engagements China is fostering with Pakistan, Afghanistan and even Bangladesh now demonstrate an attempt to reshape South Asian alignments in its favor, subtly sidelining New Delhi because New Delhi is a threat. This has real ramifications. Operation Sindoor, ongoing tensions along the line of actual control, and cross-border terror attacks underline that India's security concerns are multidimensional. China's deepening relationship with Pakistan complicates matters, especially when Beijing does not publicly condemn Islamabad's role in orchestrating terror attacks, such as the Pahalgam attack that killed 26 innocent civilians. And then how can we miss the India-Pakistan hyphenation at the summit? Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif were captured in the same frame. However, there were no talks, no handshakes, no rapprochement. They looked the other way. Distance was deliberate. Yet the world saw them hyphenated once again. After Donald Trump set the precedent in May 2025 during Operation Sindoor, a photograph, not a policy, told the story, showing that sometimes in diplomacy, perception can overshadow reality.
I think there is a bit of a paradox in India's own position on Pakistan and what India's expectations are from the United States with regard to Pakistan. Because on the one hand, India's public position is against hyphenation. We want that de-hyphenation to prevail. So now when you have an entire public diplomacy, which is essentially to repeat that point about de-hyphenating from Pakistan and your entire global outreach has been Pakistan-centric. So paradoxically, you are actually bringing Pakistan into your relationship with all these countries. So I do not know how that strategy adds up. So India will have to have a policy of completely ignoring Pakistan in its relationship with all other countries. See, that is something that India has to do first of all. Now, for all you care, I mean, there is no rational reason for the US, for the US finding Pakistan to be an extremely valuable ally.
Earlier this year, Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh refused to sign the SCO joint declaration because it did not mention the Pahalgam terror attack. Fast forward to today, and SCO has condemned the Pahalgam terror attack. China had done it the moment the attack took place, but made no mention of Pakistan's role. What good is condemnation alone? India needs action to halt Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. To make matters worse, China grouped the Pahalgam terror attack with the Jafar Express attack carried out by Balochistan rebel forces, effectively putting India in the same sentence as Pakistan. Once again, Pakistan played the victim card. The frustration is palpable, from Donald Trump attempting to solve the so-called 1,000-year-old Kashmir issue by hyphenating India and Pakistan yet again, to today, India continues to be lumped together with its adversary on the global stage. Adding to the tension, the US has announced its next ambassador to India, Sergio Gor, who is also appointed as Special Envoy for South and Central Asian affairs. What does it mean? This means he will not only operate from New Delhi, but also will be looking into the entire region and may even travel to Pakistan, potentially Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well. raising questions about India's diplomatic leverage and the optics of continued hyphenation.
Very close to India and very close to Pakistan, as you know. They've had that fight for 1,000 years in Kashmir. Kashmir's been going on for 1,000 years, probably longer than that. And it was a bad one yesterday, though. That was a bad one. Over 30 people.
Are you concerned that there's now tensions on the border between them? Are you concerned that, how are you concerned about that?
Well, there have been tensions on that border for 1,500 years. So, you know, same as it's been. But they'll get it figured out one way or the other. I'm sure that I know both leaders. There's great tension between Pakistan and India, but there always has been.
Now, can India be united with a country that has strategic interests in Pakistan? You see, India continues the pattern, hoping strategic autonomy will shield it from pressure, believing careful diplomacy buys time. But history is unkind to those who do not take a side. Putin and Kim's presence at Beijing underscores the reality of alignment, loyalty displayed, alliances cemented, narratives controlled. India's absence is tactical, yes, but it is also an admission that New Delhi has many other areas to decide. Aligning with Japan, ensuring conversations and engagement with the United States of America, but that shows indecision. And in a world where a country is judged by its allies, calculation without decisiveness is vulnerability.
Well, this question is coming up now because of the very intense, multipolar contest that's going on in the world right now. Right, the United States is the world's only superpower, but now finds its primacy being threatened by the rise of China. And China today is a threat to the United States in a way the Soviet Union could never be. Now, the Soviet Union was a military threat. It was an ideological threat to the United States, but it was never an economic threat. And that's one reason the Soviet Empire collapsed in 1991. But in 2025, the United States is confronted with a very, very economically powerful China, which is the manufacturing superpower of the world. It has a military machine that's literally only second to that of the United States, and it's slowly going to become a near peer adversary of the United States. So there you see two clear poles emerging, that the United States primacy is now being directly threatened by China, and therefore the question being asked is, should India have to choose between the United States, which was traditionally our go-to bloc over the last 25 years. We were very close to the United States, and the coming together of both of these two democracies had to do with containing China. But now the fact that China has broken out of that phase of containment suggests that the pressure on New Delhi will be there to join one or the other blocs. But again, like I said, it is very unlikely that New Delhi will choose one bloc over the other. It will continue with this policy of multi-alignment. It will do exactly as it chooses to do for the best interests of India's people, India's growing economy, which is going to be, as I said, the third largest in a couple of years.
History is instructive. Russia, Ukraine, trade with China, border clashes, strategic autonomy, strategic ambiguity, or strategic necessity. It has always left India exposed, a nation with friends who are hesitant, allies who are impatient, and adversaries who are calculating. India's challenge is clear. Engagement is essential, alignment is selective, autonomy is strategic, but patience, calculation, and careful choreography cannot substitute for decisive action. One day, New Delhi will be compelled to pick a side. Hesitation will no longer be an option, and when that day arrives, the costs of fence-sitting, political, economic, and strategic, will be unavoidable. Middle ground has limits. Strategic ambiguity has consequences. India once again is learning that waiting, calculating, and balancing may delay choices, but it cannot prevent them. Allies demand clarity, rivals exploit hesitation, friends will not wait forever. Trade, optics, and diplomacy converge. India's structural trade deficit, China's regional maneuvers, the SCO summit's limitations all point to the same lesson. Engagement without commitment is a gamble. not just for India, but for every country today. Modi's choreography may protect India in the short term, but the long-term test is approaching. India must decide or risk being left with no friends, no influence, and limited options in a rapidly polarizing world. From Tianjin to Tokyo, trade halls to border posts, military parades to photographs, India is once again straddling the line. But patience, careful choreography, and strategic autonomy cannot last indefinitely. The world is moving, alliances are solidifying, and the day will come when India must step off the fence or risk standing alone. Patience has a shelf life. The world will demand decision, and indecision may come at a price India cannot afford. Thank you for watching Statecraft.